Hello everyone, welcome back to my tips from the cottage. My name is Charles Matthew. I'm glad you could be here. I wanted to talk in this episode about some experiences that are common to the human condition. And then we'll talk about a couple of recycling things, and then we're going to cook something. One of the most common experiences, human experiences, is depression and sadness. Two things that everyone should be aware of and well understand about depression is, number one, it's common to all humans. Everyone, everywhere, at some time in their life has been depressed, has suffered through that. Where it becomes a problem is when it begins to hamper other parts of your life. Now, clinically defined, depression is a state of grief that's disproportionate to the loss of what either was real or perceived. You can enter a state of depression simply fretting about the loss of something. If you're scared to death of losing your job, a loved one has an impending health condition that you don't know how it might turn out, you can work yourself up into this state, and it can be a crippling malady of the human condition too. And it is also systemic. Many other problems can crop up from depression. The greatest people, the greatest figures throughout history have suffered at one time or another from this. I'm no exception. I've been as far out to the edge of any of you. And quite frankly, what's brought me back has been my faith in God. And I would say, irrespective of denominational orientation or even religious orientation, if you're having this problem and it seems like there is no hope and you're out there to the very edge, pray to God. And the times that I've felt the worst myself, that I just couldn't find the end of the day, was I simply said, God, help me through this day. You won't have just a magical cure for the problems of life. That's not part of why we're here. But the one thing you will have, and this has never failed me, is you'll find something that will help you get through the end of that day. And if you're a person that doesn't know God, if you don't believe in God, you might just be amazed if you give it a try. Now, in this episode, we're going to talk about a couple of recycling things, and then we're going to cook something. But I would say if you're out there and you've been without a job a couple of years, you're at the end of your benefits, you don't know what's going to happen next, pray to God. God will bring you through this. The situation's not hopeless. It may seem like it, and it seemed hopeless for me many times in my life. But there's always been something that's helped me get through it, that the good Lord has sent my way. It could be a good word from a stranger. It could be a friend that you haven't heard from in a long time. You might want to be that friend. There might be someone out there that's having a tough time, that you don't know how much that could mean to them. If you call them up and just say, I've been thinking about you. I pray that you're doing well. And it's amazing that might get them through their hard time too. Shared hard times spreads the weight. And if you look throughout history too, in that respect, that's how our forefathers made it to the point where they could tame this country, was by sharing those lows. And if you're out there at the edge, talk to someone, talk to your doctor, talk to a member of the clergy, talk to your preacher, your rabbi, even a friend, a trusted friend that you feel you can share their confidence in this problem. And a lot of times just talking about this really helps. If you look at an interesting point in history, Before we had such well-developed medicine, and people were still suffering with the same problem since the beginning of time, that what did they do? What kept them going? And it's interesting to look at how a lot of civilizations throughout history dealt with this problem. And one of the most common ways of dealing with this, and you've heard it before, we say involvement. Well, in past civilizations, before we had such well-defined terms, that it simply meant giving people things to do that kept their mind off whatever this was causing, was the source of this grief. The navies of the old world, that was the reason for one of their techniques of just doing everything, just constantly scrubbing the deck, scraping barnacles off the hull, was always to keep those sailors' mind on something. Give them something to do, keep them busy, and I can honestly say, if you can, that's a well-prescribed tonic. For yourself, if you can just make out a list of things, you can volunteer for organizations. One of the most underrated volunteer programs is volunteering for hospital, and it doesn't have to be a ministry. It can be something as simple as going and volunteering at a retirement home, especially a retirement home or a hospital, and simply being on the visitation crew. When I was a kid, they used to, they were the ladies' auxiliary and things like that. But this is something anybody can do, and there's some people that are in a state of depression that could really use some positive words. So find something to get out for some fresh air. Go down to the park. Go to the library. You might find a lot of things that are totally free. Don't cost you a cent, to just occupy your time, your mind, and before long, things will brighten up. Now, one of the things that I wanted to mention on the last video about when we were recycling the gallon jugs, and I forgot to mention this, was when we cut the bottom off. The bottom has a hump in it that won't let a pan or a cup sit flat. So I just simply went out across the street, picked up 3 handfuls of gravel, put them in. It's good for the drainage anyway. Then take your recycled pot, set it in there. You've got a watering pan that saves you at least $1.50. The other thing, now this is grotesquely simple, but hey, we're recyclers and we like simple things. This bag is simply a Subway sandwich bag. The reason I like using these, recycling these, is because it's a long and narrow bag. It's not big. This is perfect for just put on the radio knob on the door handle, and doesn't take up a lot of room. It's real inconspicuous, and once you fill it up with trash while you're driving and whatnot, just throw the whole thing away. Something else just saves you. Back in the days before Don't Mess with Texas litter campaign, we had another campaign that the state used to give out bags real similar to this to put on your radio knob, and I always did remember those from when I was a kid. And you don't see them anymore, but a Subway bag is perfect. It's narrow, it's long, inconspicuous. You just put it on your door handle, radio knob, whatever, and then throw the whole thing away later. I'm gonna stop the tape, and then we're gonna cook something. Okay, we're in the kitchen now, and I wanted to dedicate this episode to my nephew Kyle and his lovely wife Morgan. Hope y'all are doing okay, and I hope God sends his richest blessings upon you. You always know there's something cooking at the cottage. Okay, what we got here, we'll jump right into this. This is challah. It's a delicious Jewish recipe. The traditional recipe is meat, potatoes, and barley, but this is a vegetarian version. About 5 years ago, and this is somewhat of a mystery to me, I started gravitating toward becoming a vegetarian, and quite frankly, it was as easy as falling off a wagon. I mean, I don't know why, but it just became very easy to leave meat behind, and I would say that not just vegetarian, but vegan. And for me, leaving meat behind was pretty easy, and I would say I'm 99% vegetarian. And this recipe goes right along with that. And I did get this off a Jewish website, and it is in this format. There's only one ingredient that I'll leave off, which I'll get to that later. The basic ingredients for this are 1 beet, large beet, which beet, butternut squash, which both these are from last year's garden. Another way to save money. 1 onion, 1 potato cubed, 1.5 cups of beans, and these beans here, see if I can get this up to where you can see this real well. This particular bean, this one with the lovely color red and white, burgundy and white, those are Anasazi beans, and a lot of you already know what those are. It's similar to a pinto bean, at least it tastes like it when it's cooked up. It has the same type, this color disappears. And this is a mixture of turtle beans, red kidney beans, and Anasazi. And just to be rather blunt, these 3 particular beans, but especially the Anasazi, are a lot easier on the gas problem, and delicious at that too. It was a good combination. But Anasazi, black turtle, and red kidney. 1.5 cups of that. 1/2 cup of quinoa. Now, a lot of people know what that is. A lot of people don't. It's an interesting grain from South America. And the one thing you want to make certain that you do, when this plant grows and makes these seeds, it creates a natural saponin. And you want to be sure and rinse that off before you put this in a pot. You don't, you'll be making probably a few more trips to the restroom than you thought. Okay, here's some just whole wheat berries, what some people call whole wheat or wheat berries. Bulgur wheat will work as well. I've made it with that. And then it calls for 3 cloves of garlic, but since I don't have fresh cloves, we just use a heaping teaspoon of canned, tablespoon of soy sauce, and a tablespoon of paprika. Okay, now if you're observant and you want to make this for the traditional Shabbat meal, what you're going to need to do for sure, I found this out the hard way, coat your crock pot really well with a non-stick spray, Pam or whatever. If you don't, the quinoa especially cakes up. Now, one thing that I do different than what the recipe calls for, they just say to mix it all on Friday night, bring the temperature up to high for 1 hour, then back down to low, let it cook overnight, and then stir it up. One ingredient, which is the one I leave off, that the recipe calls for is a package of matzah. Make matzah balls and put it in there. That's the one ingredient I leave off. There's, for no particular reason other than it comes out more like a straight stew if doing it this way. There's nothing wrong with the other way though, at all. But be sure you use the non-stick on the crock pot, or else it'll cake up. Now the quinoa and the wheat berries, I let every other ingredient cook the full time that it needs to cook, and of course the big time consumer is the beans. But I add the quinoa and the wheat in the last hour of cooking. The texture comes up so much better that way. I think I've tried it both ways, and it should take about 5 hours. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and put it all in the pot, and then we'll stop the tape and come back when it's in the last hour. We'll add the quinoa. This is very healthy. You know, we were talking about feeling down earlier. this is, I believe, the appropriate term in this day and time is comfort food. Well, this, believe me, this with the grains, the legumes, the vegetables, well, sure make you feel good. Make you want a second helping for sure. Definitely a comfort food. So we'll go ahead and add these. And I simply, these beets just did so well last year, just amazing. I just put the water and everything in. The recipe calls for 6 cups of water. Well, I just added right up to the top because by the time the wheat and quinoa are added, that's very absorbent, and you just almost can't put too much water. So I fill it right up to the top and kind of get this going. Then we'll add the beans. Salt wise, I like to try to take it easy on the salt, just because, well, just because it's, I think we know the problems that salt causes. Too much salt, that is. Of course, you can have too much, you can also have problems from not enough. I'm just gonna, if you add too much garlic, you know what garlic can do. It's just, if you get it just right, it's really flavors things well, but if you get it too strong, whoop, it flavors it. Okay, I'm just going to take a rough shot at guessing on my, about a tablespoon of soy sauce. And something else, this is a very inexpensive, especially if you grow your own vegetables. And butternut squash, I'll tell you, the fragrance is so pleasing that reminds me of cantaloupe, and just delicious. And of course, you know, traditional Thanksgiving meals, what would it be without butternut squash? Any winter squash, as a matter of fact, will work. A lot of people don't like messing with butternut because it's so hard to peel. And I'll be the first to admit that it's hard to peel, but it's well worth it. You just want to be careful, and that's another thing we'll cover in future segments is kitchen safety. And believe me, I got the battle scars to prove you want to be careful. So we'll go ahead and stop the tape. We'll get it cooking. We'll come back and we'll add in the last hour. We'll add the quinoa and the wheat berries, which bulgur wheat will work just as well. And then the other thing about this dish that I really like is it freezes extremely well. It I'll make it up. This should make about 10 bowls like this. And then just you know, for supper, just take it out, put it in the microwave, and heat it up. But like I said, if you're not, the word I'm looking for is observant. If you're observant, then just add, at this point you would add, well, you put the quinoa and the wheat berries in, but then you'd also add the matzo balls. And then you just stir it up the next day. And but just be sure you put some non-stick coating in there. So we'll go ahead and stop the tape, and then we'll come back. Okay, we're back. And this actually only took about 4 hours. We'll take a look at this, kind of show you what our cholent looks like. Oh, it's really boiling. Okay, we added the, actually about 30-40 minutes ago, we added the wheat and the quinoa. And if you can notice, the quinoa kind of pops open. It's very much like millet, which you could substitute millet too. And if you take out the meat, a lot of people will think, well, where's your protein? Well, anytime you combine legumes and grains, wonderful thing about nature, it forms a complete program. And so you're not missing out on anything. As far as salt, I use kosher salt, kosher sea salt. And when I say sea salt, I refer to the sea salt that they get from the ancient lake beds. This particular sea salt comes from Utah. You can find it in any health food store, and the interesting thing about that salt, and nobody seems to know why, is it leaves a sweet taste in your mouth. It was deposited there in the Jurassic period, and they come back and mine it and sell it in health food stores. I think it's the particular one I buy is under the brand name of sea salt, kosher sea salt. I'm sorry, real salt, kosher sea salt. Anyway, I use both kinds of salt, but that's the one I use for flavoring. By the way, one thing I forgot to mention earlier is if you want to add some extra flavor, the original recipe for this does call for a package of onion soup mix, and it does add to the flavor. And this right here will make at least a week's worth of evening meals if you want to have it every night, for one person, that is. Okay, I'm going to stop the tape, and then we're going to get set back up in the tea room. Okay. Well, I hope there were some tips that you could use here today. Find something to recycle, and if you're feeling down, don't worry, it'll pass. It'll pass. Find some involvement, and while you're still on YouTube, check out Big Daddy Weave, Love Come to Life. It'll lift your spirits. And if you do let love come to life, you'll live a whole new, different life. So get involved and make some comfort food, and those gray clouds will begin to part. I promise. Till the next bend in the road, we'll see you.